Hello, my name is Richa Batra, and I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the Student Success Organization at Blackboard. I'm also a GW alumni. I received my MBA there in 2008. So the first question I am going to answer is how did I grow up? What was my background? And I grew up. My parents immigrated to this country, and I would say very hardworking, work life. Parents owned small businesses, and just very entrepreneurial spirit. So at a very young age, I was exposed to that. Often would visit their offices, their store, to be able to see it in person, and always trying to come up with solutions that may help them with their business. And I'd say a lot of my obviously my work ethic comes from my parents and seeing that, but also just seeing my parents in action, the way that they're always been very people first. That's the most important thing to them. They'd always make time for people, and that's how they focus their work, and they still do. And I think I take a lot of that with me as I've continued my work as well. It's just very much embedded in the way that I like to be as well. How would I describe my leadership style, and how would other people describe my leadership style? I, there's nothing I'm going to ever ask my team that I wouldn't do myself. And I would say my team would definitely describe, strong work ethic, um, very much people first. I've definitely heard people say this, I care. I definitely expect, hard results. And that's really important, that we need to drive the results for our company from a performance standpoint. But at the same time, making sure we have the right people in the right place, in the right roles, and that we're setting the right goals and expectations. We're communicating very clearly. I think those are things that are really important for me to set. What is the vision of the organization? What are the goals? What are we personally accountable for? How are we tracking to those goals? And then from there, just making sure we're taking care of our people and putting the right people in the right roles and giving them the opportunity. I think that's what's important for me from a leadership or business leadership standpoint, of feedback that I've heard about me and things that are important as well. Key areas of knowledge, and key things that I've learned over the years. I mean, I remember a very particular conversation that I had with a former boss years ago about just making sure there is a documented, written, proactive plan. And that has really stuck with me. And that's something that I've done year over year, quarter after quarter, and very much lay out a multi-year plan. And it has evolved. What I do today is much more elaborate than what I did 5 years ago. But just having a proactive, documented plan and vision and that knowledge of how to create that, it can be very easy to respond and react and be busy with activity. But I think what's really important is to make sure to think about who do you want to be in 3 years? What kind of work do we want to do as a business in 3 years? And what is our path to get there? And what are the measurable results to say we did a great job? So just having the discipline to be able to do multi-year roadmaps and iterate that on that monthly, quarterly, I think has been just was great feedback. And it was great for me to be able to understand how to do that in a very regimented way. And I think that has definitely driven a lot of the performance of the organization. Another key one, and this is again back to people first. Communication is still key with me. Clearly communicate what are the goals and objectives. Communicate often. Communicate clearly. Communicate on time. How are people doing? What can we be doing differently? I think that's really important. And especially now, since we're remote, and being remote for almost a year, sometimes the silence is deafening, and we need to make sure that we're over communicating what's important, how people are doing. And, that's something I need to continue to make sure I remind myself as well. I like the personal communication. I think before COVID, I would see my teams in person, which I can't do now. So the question is, how do we try or attempt to replicate that same experience of me making sure I'm not only meeting with my teams, but my team's teams and their teams, just so we have a good understanding of what is the sentiment of our business? What is the sentiment of our leadership? how do people feel about working here? Do they love what they do? Do they have feedback on what we can do differently? I think that is really important. And I did it so often in a very ongoing way, that being remote, just making sure I'm replicating those communications in a virtual environment, that they're still meaningful and allow me to have that personal connection. And at the same time, allows me to remember what communication is really important and how to get that out in various different modes. Obviously, email, one-on-one conversation, all hands meetings. Those are things I do on a very regimented basis, and communication cascade is very important. You know, I oversee over 1,200 people within my organization, and when you have that many people, the communication can't just be informal, and it has to, you know, you have to think about it from, how are people going to read this, or how are people going to take this on a video? Can I open it up for questions? So those are things that are really important. I'd say more now than ever, just having clear communication and making sure it's cascaded in various different ways, so people feel very tied into the goals and objectives and performance of the organization. What am I most rewarded by, or what are some of the most rewarding things that I've had? For me, it still comes back to, you know, the top achievements are the people that I've seen that have started within our organization at different roles and have grown into leading, you know, large teams and doing different type of work. You know, myself, I've been very lucky to have been promoted from within many different times, and just having that opportunity has been, I've been grateful for it. And I think when I see other people do it, it's just been, it is the most rewarding when you're able to meet someone and identify top talent at a very early stage in their career, where they're able to take on stretch assignments or learn on their own. And then they, you know, when there's an opportunity that opens up, if they're able to fill it and add more value and their perspective. You know, there are multiple examples from my time at Blackboard that I can share, and that's my most rewarding. And I would say, you know, a second is, you know, I've been in the same division for over 10 years. And I think there was a way of running the business, you know, 10 years ago. And, you know, going back to that multi-year roadmap and thinking through it of, what do we want the business to look like? What is my vision for the business? And thinking about different ways to do it, and thinking about how different the student experience is going to be in 5 years from now, 3 years from now. And what do we want? What steps do we need to take to change and shift not only the student experience, but how our business model reacts and responds to the student experience? So I think that's been rewarding as well, to know that we can make transformational change in a business that's 15 years old, even though I still feel like we have a very much of an entrepreneurial spirit to our DNA. We're very much a startup in that way, that we're focused on taking care of our people, our clients, coming out with the next, you know, next idea or product or service. We don't want to lose that. But still thinking about, how do we want to do work differently, and everyone being open to that, I think is really important. You know, the question of what leadership looks like to me, and it's something that evolves and changes. But I think what's really important is, you know, as years have gone on, I'm much more clear about what my values are and what's important to me and who I am. And since I've been able to articulate that to myself, and I'm able to identify what feels right and what doesn't feel right, I'm able to surround myself with people that also, who are shared values. And I think that's really changed my ideas of leadership for myself, for my teams, and then who I also, you know, look up to. What does leadership look like to me? A transparent communication, someone who's there to lift you up and lift everyone else up around you, to really focus on not only achieving company objectives, but the objectives of the people that they serve. I mean, that concept of who do we serve, it's absolutely our clients, but it's our employees. And if we have people that are happy and love being here and love doing the work that they're doing, that's only going to improve the overall client experience. And I think that's really important, that we serve external clients, but we also serve our employees. And that's what leadership looks like to me. I think another component of it is as time goes on, just knowing again what my values are, what's important, being able to be that voice when maybe other people don't have that same voice at the table. So diversity, equity, inclusion, now it's coming to the forefront over the last 6 to 9 months, and just taking that opportunity anytime we can to be able to say, I'm going to advocate for a voice that may not be at this table right now, or how are we thinking about all these various different groups. I think that demonstrate leadership is a great demonstration of leadership to me. Maybe saying the uncomfortable that maybe people are thinking and don't want to say, but it's needed to say, because we want to make sure our values, we're always looking at, are we meeting our values? Are we doing all the right thing and serving all of our people and all of our employees? So I think that those are some ways that that leadership is meaningful to me. I think there's a question about entrepreneurship as well. And I definitely feel, running a business unit is running my own business. And I think when I graduated from GW, I always wanted to have my own business. I wanted to be the CEO of my own company. And I was very lucky to do the work that I'm doing now. And I've continued to grow in that role. And I feel like I'm running my own business and responsible for the overall P&L of it and every aspect of it from a general management standpoint. And I still feel like we run like a lot of ways like a startup, in the sense that we want to hit our goals. We want to be fast paced, thriving, and just continue to see how we can be a market leader. We never want to just say, oh, well, that's how we did it and that's how we'll continue to do it. I think that's really important. You won't hear that from our teams. And when you do, we always challenge that. For me, I want to continue to see growth and how we can do things differently, and just continue to reassess who do we serve internally and externally, and how can we improve? How can we be a market leader, and how can we better ourselves while we're doing it? And, I think the last question here is learning moment. I mean, there've been many, many, many over the years. And I would say the last, the one that's on my mind the most is going through COVID in the last year, and personally adjusting to that, and then work related adjusting to it as well. Since I was a work from home employee, I started to be a work from home employee 1 month before COVID. And I had worked from home, from time to time previously. I felt, because my teams had always been remote, that it was not going to be an adjustment at all. I thought this was pretty seamless. And I think pretty quickly I realized that this is not the same. I'm not going to have that time one-on-one with them. Even if it was, a couple days out of the month or a couple days out of the quarter, it was different. And I think just the learning moment of, I'm going to have to change my style. I'm going to have to change my approach. What worked for me before is not working for me now in a remote environment. And it came down to just thinking and reassessing and reevaluating how I was going to be effective in this new situation. And it was probably over communicating is where I started, because I think people needed to hear from me, from others more often. I always turned on my video. I thought that was really important. And I do daily. I always have video to make sure people, if they don't feel comfortable, that's completely fine. But I want to make sure they can see me and my reactions. And that's really important for them to understand what I'm saying and how it's being delivered, because a lot of things can be misconstrued over voice. And, and a lot of people take information differently, whether it's in person or email or over voice. So I like to give a couple of those different options so people feel comfortable. And then just making the time and the space to have dedicated connection time. So virtual catch-ups, even if it's like a virtual coffee, just being able to schedule that in advance. Quarterly all hands meetings to be able to communicate what is the strategic vision and direction. How are we performing? Skip level meetings for me to just have that connection, even though I'm not going to be in all the offices in person anymore. So I think I realized, based off of I was starting to feel disconnected from the team. What could I do differently to be able to get some of that back? So I feel like we're in a good cadence now, but it's, I'm going to see how it goes for the next month, quarter. And if I'm feeling any disconnection, it will be going back and reevaluating that as well.